I still remember that night like it's tattooed behind my eyes, every flicker of the chandeliers, every whisper, every fake smile. It was supposed to be just another charity gala in Manhattan, the kind where folks drink $1,000 champagne and call it generosity. I walked up those marble steps in a navy dress I'd saved for months to wear, my hair pinned neat, my heart steady. I wasn't a stranger to these rooms. I'd helped fund them, advised some of the companies whose names glimmered on the sponsorship board. But the second the security guard looked me up and down and pointed to the service entrance, I felt that old familiar sting in my chest. "Back there," he said. "We don't check the guest list for the kitchen." I smiled anyway, but inside I thought, here we go again. I could have corrected him right then, but something in me held back. Maybe curiosity, maybe spite, maybe both. I walked through that service door and into a world of steam and clattering dishes, where the only people who looked like me wore aprons and rubber gloves. We traded glances, me and my dressed them in uniforms, but nobody said a word. And then she appeared. Veronica Haynes, the queen bee of uptown fundraisers. She gave me that once-over and hissed, "Someone like you doesn't mingle with donors. You can help in the kitchen." Just like that. No question, no pause. A push toward the sink. I still hear the guests' voices bleeding through the kitchen door. "She probably tried to sneak in," one said. They always do. I rolled up my sleeves and started washing dishes, the hot water biting my skin. Inside, though, I wasn't shrinking. I was watching. Clocking every smirk, every little jab. Maria, the woman drying glasses next to me, whispered, "Don't take it to heart, honey. This is just how they are." I glanced at her and smiled, but there was steel in it. She didn't know I'd spent 12 years building a consulting firm that could erase reputations in an afternoon. She didn't know my husband owned the house we were standing in. 3 hours earlier, my husband, Daniel Mercer, had texted he'd be late. Board meeting ran long. "Just enjoy the gala," he'd said. He didn't know I'd be elbow deep in dish soap instead of sipping wine. But his voice from that morning played in my head. People show who they are when they think no one important is watching. Back then, it sounded like a proverb. In that kitchen, it felt like prophecy. Then the insults started to snowball. Veronica swept back in with two of her friends, Richard Blaine, the real estate mogul, with the cufflinks big enough to choke a horse, and Patrice Lane, heiress to a pharmaceutical fortune. "You're washing too slowly," Veronica announced loud enough for the staff to hear. "People like you should be grateful for any kind of work." Richard chuckled. "In my company, she wouldn't even get an interview." Patrice added, "We give too many chances to people who don't deserve them." They didn't even see me as a person, just a prop for their moral theater. I dried my hands, turned to them slowly, and said, "Interesting perspective." My voice came out calm, soft, but it sliced the air like glass. Especially since this gala is supposed to fund programs for underprivileged kids. I wonder how they'd feel hearing your take on the less fortunate. The room went still. Maria froze, the water still running over her hands. Veronica blinked like no one had ever spoken back to her before. "Excuse me," she snapped. I stepped closer. "You're here raising money for them, yet you can't treat someone you think is one of them with dignity." Richard cleared his throat. "That's different." "Is it?" I cut him off gently. "Or is it exactly the same mindset that keeps people down?" Patrice stared at me like she'd just realized the chandelier was talking. "You're being very bold for someone in your position," Veronica said, her voice starting to wobble. I tilted my head. "My position? And what position would that be exactly?" She faltered, caught between calling me staff and calling me out. "You're washing dishes in my kitchen," she said at last, trying to sound firm. "Your kitchen?" I raised an eyebrow. "How interesting. Tell me, Veronica, do you even know who owns this mansion?" She smirked, but I could see a tremor run through her jaw. "It belongs to the Blackthorne family. We rent it every year." Of course, I said obviously, but my tone made her shift her weight like the floor had tilted. Then came the footsteps. Steady, firm, familiar. Maria whispered to another staffer, "Mr. Mercer's here." My heart did a little flip. Perfect timing. Veronica tried to block my path to the door. "You can't leave until you finish the dishes." I slipped off the apron and handed it to her like a gift. "My job here," I said, "is just beginning." Out in the hall, Daniel's voice boomed. "Where is my wife?" The kitchen froze. Veronica's eyes darted to Richard and Patrice. "Your wife," Patrice whispered. "Daniel Mercer's married." I held up my left hand, sliding the ring into view. "He did bring a wife tonight. You just decided I belonged in the kitchen instead of the main hall." Daniel walked in, shoulders squared, eyes like ice. "Nora." He said my name, sounding like a lifeline. "David told me what happened." "Are you okay?" I smiled, all calm and composure. "I'm fine. Just got an education tonight." He kissed my forehead, then turned to the trio. "Veronica Haynes, Mr. Blaine, Ms. Lane, welcome to my home." His voice was velvet over steel. They stumbled over themselves. We didn't know what Daniel cut in. That my wife is a person who deserves basic respect, or just didn't know she was my wife. Richard tried to placate him. "If we had known—" "That's exactly the problem," I interrupted softly. "You only treat people decently when you know they have power." Daniel noticed my phone on the counter, recording everything. He gave me a look, a small, cold smile. "David." He called to his assistant at the door. "Bring your tablet. We have some calls to make." Veronica's face drained of color. "Daniel, we can resolve this civilly." "Civilly," he repeated, his voice rising just enough to make everyone flinch. "Like forcing my wife to wash dishes in her own home." He started dialing numbers, speaking loud enough for the whole kitchen to hear. "Yes, Janet, cancel our sponsorship of all events organized by Haynes Productions. Permanently." Click. Next call. "Richard Blaine's contracts with Mercer Group, cancel them effective immediately." Click. "Westfield Pharma Supply deal terminated." The three of them stood frozen, their empires crumbling in real time. Patrice whispered, horrified, "You recorded everything." I held up my phone. "Every word, every laugh, every little comment you thought was harmless." David handed Daniel the tablet, and he began forwarding files to reporters and media outlets. "Society Watch loves this kind of hypocrisy," he muttered. Veronica's knees seemed to buckle. "Please, Daniel, this will ruin my life." He looked at her, cold but measured. "You tried to ruin someone's dignity. The difference is, she did nothing to deserve it." Maria stared at me like she was seeing a ghost and a saint all at once. In 20 years of wiping glasses, she'd never seen someone defend the staff like that. "There's one more thing," I said, my voice steady. "Veronica, you said people like me never get far. In addition to being Daniel's wife, I'm the CEO of Mercer Strategy Group. We just got the city contract to review all public event vendors." The last trace of color drained from her face. By morning, the headlines blazed across every screen: the silent strike, how Uptown's elite got unmasked in a single night, clients canceled, partnerships dissolved, employees revolted. Veronica tried to rebrand herself as a diversity consultant, but no one bought it. Richard sold off his company in pieces. Patrice faced lawsuits and lost her board seat. Meanwhile, Maria enrolled in a training program I launched for domestic staff moving into hospital administration at 60 years old. My consulting firm doubled its staff. Invitations poured in from universities and conferences asking me to speak on power, prejudice, and change. The hashtag Nora Mercer Challenge trended nationwide, people sharing their own stories of being underestimated and humiliated in elite spaces. A year later, I stood at a podium at Harvard Business School, looking out at hundreds of young faces, and said, "True power isn't humiliating those you think are beneath you. True power is lifting people up so the old hierarchy dies on its own." The applause rolled over me like a wave, but not everyone clapped. Some thought what happened that night was too harsh, too public, too final. They said I should have shown mercy. Others said it didn't go far enough. And that's the part of the story I want you to sit with. Because for every Veronica, Richard, and Patrice, there are thousands of small moments when somebody gets sent to the service entrance instead of the front door, when somebody's worth gets measured by the color of their skin or the cut of their clothes. So now I'm asking you, watching this video right now, to think about your own life. Have you seen someone treated like they were invisible? Have you been that someone? Drop a comment below. Tell me what you think. Was the punishment too harsh, or was it justice finally catching up? Because the truth is, this story isn't just mine, it's ours. And maybe talking about it is how we start to tear down the walls between the kitchen and the chandelier room once and for all.